Let me follow your question one by one. The problem was not negotiation between myself and him before a real sense of a breakthrough, a readiness to contemplate, to take the president's ideas as a basis for negotiation had emerged. It's not national interests of historic dimensions are not about psychology of leaders. Menachem Begin.
A lot of people disagree with you on that.
Menachem Begin never
Reagan and Gorbachev, for instance?
Menachem Begin never talked with Sadat or Camp David. I cannot recall President Nixon talking to Giap. I cannot recall
Reagan, Gorbachev.
De Gaulle talking
Reagan, Gorbachev didn't make any difference?
To Ben Bella.
Psychology?
Yeah, it makes a lot of difference since the readiness had been created and it was clear from the behavior, not the talk, the behavior of Gorbachev, that he is determined to put an end to the Cold War, even with high political risk for himself. If Arafat were a Gorbachev-like of Palestinian leader, we would already have a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians.
You have no peace agreement, you have nothing on the table, and you made the whole peace process now hostage to isolated acts of terror, for which Arafat cannot be held responsible for every act of terror. So unless there is, you are handing, as I've said earlier, a veto to the extremists on the whole peace process.
We're not giving you a veto.
Why? You've strengthened the hand of Islamic Jihad here.
We are doing what every responsible leadership of a nation under the attack of violent terror would do at the same situation. We will never sway under terror threats. I just visited Lady Thatcher this morning and praised her once again for her ability not to sway when half of the hotel at Brighton collapsed and she sat with members of cabinet at the other half.
But your policy buys you no peace and no quiet, does it? You have the most sophisticated, largest armed forces in the region, and it gives you no security whatsoever. The tactic's wrong, isn't it?
Neither you nor the Americans never swayed in face of Gaddafi and never raised the question why to corner him, maybe someone worse will emerge. Once it became clear that he sent these two gentlemen that exploded the airplane over Lockerbie, you stood firm for 10 years. This is the only way. Terror thugs, and Arafat is one, are very skillful in reading cracks in the staying will or will of power of leaders of the world. And we cannot afford for the long-term results of this struggle.
But Mr. Barak, you talk about the long term.
And I suggest the same thing for all leaders of the world.
Mr. Barak, you talk about the long-term effect. Look ahead. Once the shooting is over, once the conflict is over, what have the Palestinians got to look forward to?
Yeah, why not?
There's nothing to hope for and nothing to lose. You bulldoze their buildings, you collapse their economy, and even Dennis Ross said you went around sticking a finger in their eye and expecting them to like it.
It's not true. You are read in a very selected way, kind of distorted.
This is what every politician says.
Yeah, it's distortion by addition.
Every politician says this because they don't like the facts that contradict their views.
Tim, I respect the fact that you don't have enough time to put all what Dennis Ross said, and you want a more dramatic interview. It's okay for you, but it doesn't represent.
You may not like it, but he said
it. It's a very small part of what he said. Look, the reality is that we were ready. What I have done at Camp David was not a kind of trick to unmask Arafat. It was the result of finding no partner. We were ready in exchange for the end of the conflict and security for Israel to give them a Palestinian state contiguous over the West Bank, with exits to Jordan and Egypt, with a solution for the refugee problem inside the Palestinian state, and a major international fund to support them and to help them, and with even reasonable solution of the problem of Jerusalem.
You gave them a one-off offer, and now it's off the table.
No,
even you had to rush back to shore up your
You should listen to the end of it. The point is, and this is the crucial point, that Arafat was not ready to take this offer, even as a basis for negotiation and breaking all the assumptions and his commitments in Oslo turned to terror and violence.
But Mr. Barak, there wasn't even a protocol on which to build. You didn't want a protocol written.
Yeah, of course.
Did you?
Of course.
Why not?
We were...
A protocol would have meant you could have built on what was achieved.
We were suspicious in advance that maybe what Arafat is trying to achieve is a documented version of our position and the American position in order to carry it on and try to...
Something to build on. That's understandable,
to take something or to get something more through international imposition of a solution. So we are ready to take far-reaching calculated risks. We are not ready to become suckers. I have decided to put an end to unilateral transfer of assets before it becomes clear that we have a partner that is serious and ready to take painful decisions on behalf of his own people in exchange for the painful decisions I had to take in regard to us. But let me tell you something about the future. I believe that what should be done now, we should present a strategy based on two inseparable pillars. Pillar number one, a door wide open, the size of the whole wall, for resumption of negotiations.
When? At what point?
Without any preconditions beyond the absence of violence at any time based on...
What do you mean beyond the absence of violence? You're pushing out the same line as Mr. Sharon then?
Beyond the absence of violence, we should not demand any precondition, but based on the principles of Camp David. If this is one pillar.
So you don't differ from Sharon at all?
I differ
You're
quite significantly.
Exactly the same as Sharon?
No, Sharon doesn't say that he's ready to negotiate based on the principles of Camp David.
But he won't negotiate unless violence stops. Yeah, and violence won't stop unless you negotiate and give the Palestinians something.
Believe me, violence should be stopped before anything else happens, since this is the only precondition. If violence could become a major tool, if terror, like what we have witnessed today in New York, can be a tool in negotiation between a free democratic society and a terror thug that is hopefully become a benign leader of a future state, if the rule is that violence is part of the recipe, we won't end it.
You have been condemned for violence all over the world, for excessive use of violence, for shelling Palestinian villages, for bulldozing their houses. You've been condemned, and it's brought you, the policy has brought you nothing, has it?
I believe.
So it's time to change the policy, Mr.
I believe that there is no reason to draw any moral equivalence between the attacks of suicide attackers and the attacks of Arafat terrorist groups against innocent civilians in Israel and the defensive steps that Israel is taking,
including assassinations,
including hitting in advance individuals who come to hit your own civilians. Think of a member of your family. When I think of my daughter or your cousin, it becomes more clear. No government can afford it happening, and if we need a proof of it, we can see it even in these very days.
Mr. Barak, even when the violence stops, there will still be the so far insuperable problem of Jerusalem. Will Israel ever share sovereignty of Jerusalem with the Palestinians?
We were ready during Camp David against the kind of conventional wisdom that we were not ready to contemplate alternatives. We were ready during Camp David to contemplate delaying the issue of Jerusalem by 2 years.
Hadn't it been delayed enough? What was the point of delaying and delaying and delaying? It had to be settled sometime.
It was not suggested by us. We were ready to solve it. We were ready to delay it. The Palestinians refused. So you should ask them why they refused to
How were you going to
discuss it.
How were you going to solve it? What was your plan to solve it?
By standing firm, struggling against terror, and providing this strategy on two pillars. One,
that wasn't much of a concession, was it, by standing firm on pillars?
A door wide open without any preconditions beyond the absence of violence to resume negotiation at any time based on the principles of Camp David. The other pillar, inseparable one, is to launch a gradual plan over 4 years to disengage, to separate ourselves from the Palestinians. We have to make it clear to the whole world, to ourselves and to the Palestinians.
Tell me one thing, Mr.
That
Barak.
we are determined to put an end to the reigning over another people.
If there had been a peace agreement between you and the Palestinians, would we now have seen the terrible attacks that we've seen in New York and Washington, which have caused the deaths of thousands of people?
Quite probable. I'm warning for years now that this terror challenge will try to blackmail the whole advanced civilization of the world, using our highly sophisticated arrangements.
This is blackmail?
Sophisticated infrastructure, and they will try to dictate their will to the free world. And there is no way but to launch a global, concerted effort to put an end to it by immediately coordinating between the United States, UK, Europe, and Russia, a world struggle to put an end. It will take half a generation. It will cost many other lives on the way, but we are capable of putting an end to it if we are determined enough to isolate every country who is ready to host terror and to call every rogue leader and every thug of terror by its accurate name and act upon our judgments.
Ehud Barak, been a pleasure having you on the program. Thank you very much indeed.